Why you'd regret being a World War I trench soldier. Before we begin, what hour found you here tonight? Can't sleep? Neither can many others. Drop your time below, I always read them. Congratulations, you're now a proud member of the British Expeditionary Force. That's what the paperwork says, at least. What it doesn't say is that you've effectively signed up to live in a mud-soaked coffin that occasionally catches fire and screams. The train that dumped you here has already rattled off towards someplace less cursed. And now you're standing, ankle deep in something that might be mud, might be manure, might be former Private Wilkins. No one really knows, and frankly, no one asks. Move, shouts a man with a mustache that looks like it's been through a bar fight. That's your sergeant. You don't learn his name today. You'll hear it screamed often enough over the next few months, usually followed by something about your posture, your useless hands, or your failure to distinguish left from right under pressure. Your uniform doesn't fit, the tunic's too short, the trousers sag, and your helmet sits on your head like a dented soup bowl. You carry a rifle that hasn't been cleaned since Queen Victoria was alive, and a pack that contains exactly one pair of socks, a half brick of bread, and enough paper to write your last will and testament. They march you toward the front line. You know it's the front line because the air smells like gunpowder, blood, and existential dread. The closer you get, the more surreal it becomes. Barbed wire snarled like angry vines, shell holes that steam despite the cold, and trees twisted into blackened claws, reaching out of the ground like they're trying to escape. When you arrive, the trench greets you like a hungry mouth. It's deeper than you expected, narrow, damp, and alive. Alive with movement, noise and smell. The walls drip. The floor oozes. The rats stare at you like you're the intruder. Not them. Someone tosses you a shovel. Dig, they say. You dig. Not because you're ordered to. Not because it makes sense. But because the man who handed you the shovel is missing a chunk of his face. And when a man like that says, dig, you assume he knows what he's talking about. Your first job is to deepen the latrine. You're given no gloves, no explanation, and no help. Just a pointed stick and a trench full of men pretending not to watch you as you immediately step in something that squelches with authority. By noon, you've learned the first 3 rules of trench life. 1. Never leave your boots unattended. The rats will eat them, not nibble. Eat. 2. If someone shouts, incoming, you don't look, you drop, wherever you are. Doesn't matter if you're holding soup, a letter from home, or your own bladder. 3. Don't get attached. Not to people, not to routines, not to plans. Everything here can disappear in a flash, especially people. You're assigned to a dugout with 5 other men. None of them look happy about it. One snores like a collapsing barn. Another has a cough that sounds terminal and smells worse. The third spends all day cleaning his bayonet with a stare that suggests he might use it on someone for snoring too loudly. The fourth simply rocks back and forth, whispering something about Ypres. The fifth hands you a crust of bread and says, "You'll want to eat that quick. The mold's winning." You eat it because you're starving, and because mold is now considered seasoning. Your first night is the longest of your life. You try to sleep. You fail. It's not the cold. It's not the damp. It's the symphony of horror that plays on loop. Artillery shells in the distance. Machine guns sputtering like mechanical coughing fits. Rats squealing as they fight over something you pray wasn't edible. And above all, the muffled moans of wounded men in the next trench over. Too far to reach, too loud to ignore. You pull your blanket tighter. It does nothing. You stare at the muddy ceiling and wonder how many feet have stepped where your face now rests. Someone farts. It smells like trench stew and despair. A rat scurries across your chest like it's commuting to work. You don't scream. That's lesson 4. Never scream in the trench. Not unless something's fallen off. And even then, keep it to a polite whimper. Screaming's for civilians. At some point, you sleep. Briefly. Just enough to dream of a place with light, with soap, with beds that aren't dug out of horror. You dream of your mother. She's holding out a cup of tea. You reach for it and wake up to the sergeant's boot in your ribs. On your feet, Private. Sandbags won't fill themselves. You nod. You stand. Your body protests. Your knees crack. Your spine sounds like a musket misfiring. But you move, because that's what you do now. You don't think. You don't feel. You just move. Welcome to the war. Welcome to the meat grinder. Morning isn't marked by sunshine or birdsong. It's marked by a whistle and a boot, sometimes in that order, sometimes not. You wake up sore, wet, and slightly mouldier than when you fell asleep. There's something growing in your left boot. You don't want to know what it is, and you're too tired to remove it. Breakfast is ladled into a dented tin cup that doubles as your tea mug, soup bowl, and occasional helmet when the real one goes missing. Today's menu: cold beans, warm bread that's half rats, and a teaspoon of what might be tea or might be boiled puddle. You slurp it down like it's a gift, because it is. The man next to you isn't so lucky. His cup cracked in the night, and all he has now is a wet sleeve and a handful of silent rage. You'll learn, he says, noticing your sympathy. Everything here breaks. Your cup, your boots, your mind. You nod, because what else can you do? By now, your uniform smells like trench. Not dirt, not sweat, trench. A unique perfume composed of decay, mildew, and other people's breath. You've stopped trying to clean anything. Soap's a rumor. Water's for drinking. And even that's optimistic. Your first task of the day is to rebuild a wall of sandbags that collapsed during the night. Why did it collapse? Rain. Also, rats, explosions, human error, and the fact that no one slept properly in a month. You shovel mud into sacks. Your hands blister beneath the gloves you don't have. The mud sucks at your legs like it wants you to join the trench permanently. Someone falls in head first and gets stuck. No one laughs. No one helps right away either. It's just part of the routine now. The trench isn't straight. It's zigzagged, like a drunk snake carved it out in a panic. That's on purpose, you're told. Stops the blast from wiping out everyone in a row. Small comforts. Your assigned post is a firing step near the corner. You're supposed to keep watch for the enemy. You see fog. You see mud. You see a crow perched on a broken rifle, looking just as fed up as you. Nothing happens. Then something does. A shell lands 50 yards away, close enough to make your bones twitch, far enough to not matter. You don't flinch. You've already learned the difference between too close and just loud. The shell was meant for someone else. This time. During a lull, a corporal walks by with mail. A miracle. Letters from home, if they made it through. You get one. Smudged with dirt, wrapped in twine, and somehow still fragrant with the distant memory. Flowers. Your mother writes, "Hope you're keeping clean." You laugh. The man beside you asks what's funny. You hand him the letter. He laughs too. Then wipes his nose on his sleeve and mutters something about lilies. You try to write back. You really do. But what do you say? "Dear Mum, I've named the rat under my bunk Sergeant Chew." He's friendlier than the actual sergeant and probably better at tactics. Instead, you scribble, "I'm alive, I think. Love to Dad." The bread here fights back. You hand it off. It may never arrive. The last letter you sent was found weeks later, wrapped around a soldier's foot as makeshift bandage. Later that afternoon, a body's pulled out of the mud near the latrine. No one knows who it was. The tags are gone. So is the face. You try. Not to look, you fail, and then you can't look away. The priest says a few words. No one hears them over the distant sound of machine gun fire and a rat fight breaking out 2 feet away. "Rest easy," someone mutters. Then adds, "Lucky bastard. Because dying clean is a luxury here. Dying quick, even more so." Night falls. Again. You're assigned sentry duty. That means standing still, eyes wide, staring at a horizon that's mostly black with flashes of red. Your job is to alert the others if something moves, but everything moves. The fog, the shadows, your own brain, inventing threats because it's so tired of real ones. You swear you see someone out there. You raise your rifle, finger on the trigger. Then the wind shifts, and you realize it was a torn coat on barbed wire. You lower the rifle, you breathe, you cry a little. No one sees, which means it didn't happen. Back in the dugout, you try to sleep again. You lie on your side, facing the wall, your knees drawn in, your boots still on. That's rule 5, never take your boots off, not unless you want to see your feet in new and exciting colors. Your breath fogs against the wood. The man next to you mutters names in his sleep. None of them are yours. You hear rats in the rafters. You hear coughing down the corridor. You hear yourself whisper, "It's just for a while, just until the end." No one tells you the end is still years away, and that most won't live to see it. Welcome to the front. You've survived your first 48 hours, only 1,000 more to go. Your socks have not been dry since the day you arrived. You don't remember what dry feels like. You vaguely recall it from childhood. Crisp sheets, warm towels, that one glorious summer afternoon when you stepped into a sunbeam and your skin didn't immediately shrivel or stink. Those were the golden years. Now, your toes have the texture of old pears and the smell of betrayal. Trench foot. You heard of it. You joked about it. Now it's eating you alive, starting from the bottom up. The symptoms arrive like uninvited guests. At first, it's just a chill, then the numbness, then a prickling, like you slept wrong on your foot, and then redness, swelling, skin that peels when you look at it too hard, blisters that burst in your boots and fill them with a soup so putrid you consider setting fire to your own legs. The medical officer, who, it must be said, looks like he lost a bet and got promoted to doctor, examines your foot and announces, cheerfully, "Ah yes, rot. You ask what the cure is." He says, "Dry socks and clean water." You laugh so hard you nearly pass out from irony poisoning. Because dry socks are rarer than medals. Clean water is reserved for officers and hallucinations. The rest of you survive on trench puddles, which come in 3 flavors. Brown, browner, and, God, I hope that was mud. They give you foot powder, a towel, and the world's most patronizing leaflet titled, "How to Keep Feet Dry in Adverse Conditions." You wipe your feet, sprinkle the powder, and put your soggy socks right back on. The result is a squelching noise so sad it deserves a funeral dirge. By midweek, you've started naming your blisters. One is named Regret, another is Tuesday. A third you call Major Bubbles, because it's developed a pulse and a chain of command. The rest of the platoon isn't faring better. Private Dawson lost his big toe last night. It came off in his sock like an unwanted snack. He held it up, stared at it, then said, "Well, that's that then," and went back to eating stale biscuits like nothing happened. Corporal Briggs wears 2 different boots and no socks. He claims, this is a preventative measure. You suspect madness. He walks like he's dancing with ghosts. Sergeant Clay has trench foot so bad, the medics use his toes for anatomical reference. They look like boiled sausages someone left in a bucket overnight. Still, he insists on leading morning roll call, barefoot in the frost, cursing the enemy, the mud, and occasionally God. You admire his consistency. At night, the pain gets worse. Your feet throb like tiny angry hearts. You loosen your boots to relieve pressure, then tighten them to keep the rats out. It's a losing game. One rat chewed through Private Lena's boot last week and built a nest inside. Lena didn't notice until the babies were born. He named them. No one's spoken to him since. You dream of dry things now. Towels, sunlight, a sand dune. You'd settle for a second-hand sock from a kindly orphan, anything that isn't fungal, frigid, or festering. The chaplain stops by once, offering comfort and scripture. You ask if any verse mentions trench foot. He flips through his Bible, frowns, and reads something vague about enduring affliction. Then he slips and lands in a puddle. When he rises, his faith is damp, and his trousers are ruined. He doesn't come back. The worst part isn't the pain. It's the silence. The slow, creeping decay of dignity. The way your body becomes terrain. The way you begin to see yourself, not as a soldier, but as an organism dissolving in the world's cruelest bog. You used to march. Now you hobble. You used to stand guard. Now you sit when no one's looking and hope your boots don't fuse with your skin. The only real treatment, they say, is evacuation, but you're not wounded, not technically. You're still breathing, still mostly upright, still able to lift a rifle and curse your superior officer under your breath. That's the bar now. Consciousness and resentment. One morning, the captain lines you up and announces that morale is low. He encourages everyone to soldier on. Then he returns to his heated shelter to read a newspaper printed 3 weeks ago in a country where people still care about theatre and fruit. You stomp your feet to generate warmth. The ground responds with a squish. Your toes do not respond at all. You whisper to them gently, apologetically. Then you get back to work. Because no one cares about your feet. Not here, not in the meat grinder, not until they fall off. You stop dreaming about home. You start dreaming about socks, not even warm socks. Just socks that aren't moist, or full of holes, or trying to digest your foot from the outside in. A plain cotton sock, dry and neutral smelling, now seems like a luxury item from a distant and mythical land. You'd trade half your rations for one. Maybe more. Maybe a toe. And let's be honest, you've got a few toes going spare. Every morning begins the same. A grim assessment of your lower extremities. You take your boots off slowly, with all the tension of defusing a bomb, praying nothing peels off with them. Some mornings it does, skin mostly. Once, a toenail came off and landed with a soft plop on your blanket. You looked at it, it looked back. Then you gently nudged it into a corner and said nothing to anyone. Nobody needs more horror at breakfast. They say trench foot happens when your feet stay wet too long and circulation fails. The skin dies. The nerves follow. Eventually, the whole thing turns into a lump of soft black meat, and someone has to hack it off before the rot reaches your knee. It's not a joke. It's a schedule. Private Callum, the quiet one who used to hum lullabies while cleaning his rifle, is gone now. Evacuated 2 nights ago, not because he screamed. He didn't. He just woke up with blood in his boots and a foot that looked more plant than man. He didn't want to leave, begged to stay, even as they loaded him onto the stretcher. Can still hold a gun, he said. Just point me at the Prussians. The medic promised him hot tea and a soft bed. Everyone knew that was a lie. The tea would be cold, and the bed would be in a hallway. If he was lucky, you write about it in your notebook. A single sentence, Callum's toes went north. He went west. Then you close the book and hope no one ever reads it. The sergeant tries to keep morale up by shouting things like, "Men don't complain," and "keep moving," and "You think the Kaiser's afraid of your blisters?" The answer is no. The Kaiser doesn't know about your blisters. And if he did, he'd probably laugh, sitting in some warm room with wool socks and imperial smugness. You, on the other hand, are cultivating a whole ecosystem in your boots. Mushrooms, maybe, slime molds. You can feel them bloom when you step. You swear something squelched back once. You didn't ask questions. You just kept walking. No one wants to be the guy who loses a foot in his sleep. So now, instead of resting like a human being, you sleep with one eye open and your boots half laced, just in case the trench decides to swallow you whole, or your foot decides to mutiny. The rats aren't bothered. They like feet, preferably rotten ones. They gather around you in the dark like worshippers at some unspeakable altar. You tell yourself they're not hungry enough to bite yet. But the last guy who said that woke up missing a toe and gained a very nervous disposition. So now you sleep curled up like a question mark, muttering to your boots, daring them to betray you. At mail call, you get a package. It's socks, real socks. Wool. Coarse, but clean. Probably knit by your aunt. She enclosed a note. Thought you could use something warm. You almost cry. You don't. But almost. You put them on like they're holy relics. For 10 glorious minutes, your feet feel almost human. Then the mud seeps through. The warmth vanishes, and you feel them sag, wet and resigned, like everything else in this cursed stretch of earth. Still, for a moment, you remember who you were before the rot set in. Later, someone slips in the latrine trench and snaps their leg. You're assigned to help carry him to the aid station. His screams echo through the fog, but no one looks. Everyone's busy massaging their feet, stuffing dried leaves into boots, and wondering if gangrene smells like almonds or cheese. You're not sure anymore. By evening, your right foot has gone, numb. You tell yourself it's just the cold. It's not. You know it. The foot knows it. Even the rat knows it. But you lace the boot tighter and stand anyway, because that's what you do now. That's who you are. A half-rotted soldier in the world's soggiest coffin, waiting for orders and pretending that walking still counts as living. You wonder if amputees get pension. You wonder if you'll make it that far. And then, the whistle blows. Tomorrow, you march again. Mud permitting, you wake to the sound of screaming. Not human, thankfully, but metal. Shellfire again. It's not even dawn yet, and already the air's howling like the devil got bored and decided to play percussion on your skull. You sit up fast, which is a mistake, because your helmet wasn't on, and your head collides with the dugout's roof. Splintered wood and sandbags. The wood wins. As always, you mutter a curse. The rat beside you mutters one back. Probably. Welcome to breakfast. Someone yells, "Incoming!" But you already knew. The earth is trembling. The tea in your mug, which, legally speaking, is more mud than leaf, ripples like a warning from nature itself. You grab your dented tin bowl and slosh the morning's porridge into it. It's beige, it's lumpy, and it smells faintly of oil and regret. But it's warm. That's all that matters now. Private Hemsley sits beside you, spooning his porridge with the enthusiasm of a condemned man savouring his final meal. He says, "Tastes better than yesterday. Yesterday it had a pebble in it." You say nothing, mostly because you just bit down on another pebble. You chew through it anyway. Not out of courage, but because you've already lost 2 molars and you're not emotionally attached to the others. Dental care is a fairy tale. Toothaches are the anthem of the front. The only available dentist is the quartermaster, who owns pliers and a sadistic sense of humour. So you chew. A shell lands somewhere nearby. Dirt rains down from above. A spoon clatters against a helmet. No one flinches. That was too far to matter. The ones that kill you don't whistle. They crack the air apart and then you're gone. If you heard it. You're fine. For now. Your tea has a dead fly floating in it. Not drowning. Floating. Like it gave up mid-sip and said, "Well, this is hell, isn't it?" You fish it out with your spoon, flick it toward the trench wall, and take another. Gulp. Tastes the same. It always does. Your rations this week included biscuits that could double as masonry. The edges cut your gums. One of the officers calls them iron rations. You call them edible rocks. Sergeant Beale once threw one at a rat and knocked it cold. The rat got up. The biscuit didn't break. There's jam sometimes. Not today. The cook. A man with exactly 3 facial expressions, all of them disappointed. Hands out portions with the grace of a prison guard. He doesn't speak much. Rumour has it he used to be a chef in London. Then someone caught him seasoning the food and thought he was a spy. Now he ladles slop under supervision. You take your second helping and try not to think about what the meat might have been. It's grey. That's all you know. It has the consistency of guilt and the flavour of rope. Private Dawkins found a tooth in his last portion. He named it Harold. You eat because you have to. Because you're about to go on patrol, and the only thing worse than crawling through no man's land in the freezing mud is doing it on an empty stomach. The sky turns a lighter shade of lead A few snowflakes fall. They melt before they hit your mess tin, like even the weather can't be bothered to stick around. The air smells like smoke, oil, and that sharp tang of coal that gets into your lungs and settles like unpaid rent. You look down at your boots. They're still wet. Of course they are. Your socks are damp. Your toes ache. You're not even sure if the ache is from cold or trench foot anymore. You poke one with your spoon. It doesn't move. Probably fine. The shelling slows, then stops. The silence is worse. You've learned to hate silence. It means something's coming. A messenger arrives, soaked, breathless, wide-eyed. He hands the lieutenant a folded scrap of paper, then disappears without a word. The lieutenant reads it, folds it, and sighs like a man who's just been asked to eat his own hat. Recon patrol. 20 minutes. You finish your tea. It's cold now. Not that it mattered. You pass your bowl to the cook, who scrapes it clean, with a motion that suggests this is the highlight of his day. You envy him briefly. At least he won't be crawling through mud and wire today. Your squad gathers, helmets on, rifles checked. One last bite of biscuit. One last swig of fly tea. You look at each other the way men do when they don't want to admit they're terrified. "See you after breakfast," someone says. It's a joke. You laugh anyway, because that's what breakfast does now. It fills your stomach just enough to survive the next disaster and distracts your mind long enough to forget you're already living in one. You once thought of breakfast as the start of the day. Here, it's more like the opening act to disaster. The moment you're done spooning cold porridge into your mouth with fingers that barely bend anymore, someone yells, "Gas!" and your lungs make a decision before your brain does. You grab the mask, jam it over your face, and suck in air that smells like old rubber and faint desperation. The gas turns out to be a false alarm. Probably. Maybe it was real and the wind changed. Or maybe the sentry just panicked because a mule farted upwind. Nobody apologizes. Nobody takes the mask off right away either. You've learned your lesson. The mask stays on until someone higher up dies from breathing and confirms it's safe. Once, someone took theirs off early and said, "See? Nothing to worry about," and then choked for 12 minutes straight. He lived. He doesn't talk anymore. You wipe your eyes. From smoke, or nerves, or onions, someone is cooking 2 dugouts down. You can't tell. Everything here makes your eyes sting. A sergeant limps by carrying a crate of tinned meat. His limp isn't from injury. It's because his right boot fell apart last week and was replaced with 2 socks and a prayer. He doesn't seem to notice. Or care. He says, "Eat fast. Orders are coming." Everyone tenses, because orders only come in 2 flavors, suicide and boredom. Today, it feels like suicide's turn. You're tasked with helping bring supplies to the frontmost trench line. Nothing dramatic. Just walk 50 meters over a duckboard slick with mud and blood while being casually sniped at. Deliver a crate of hardtack. Try not to die. You and 3 others load up. One guy takes 2 crates and mutters something about earning his biscuits. Everyone else pretends not to hear the tremble in his voice. You know what he's doing. Coping. It's either that or scream. You step into the trench, immediately greeted by a cold wind that somehow smells like cordite, mold, and wet socks. Always. Socks. Like the trench has 1,000 angry feet exhaling at once. The walk is short but eternal. You balance the crate against your chest. 1 foot at a time. Don't slip. Don't drop it. Don't think about the sniper who's maybe watching. You from some hidden nest across the wasteland. Someone coughs behind you. Loud. Wet. You all stop. Coughing too loud is a sin. It's like yelling, "Here I am," in the middle of a target range. The man waves it off. He says it's just the porridge. Everyone nods, but no one believes him. You reach the forward trench. Drop the crate. No one says thank you. They just rip it open like starving dogs and fight over the tins of meat that may or may not contain meat. You see a rat scamper off with a biscuit chunk. It's the fastest thing you've seen move in weeks. You head back. Someone mutters, "Maybe tomorrow we get jam." Someone else replies, maybe tomorrow the war ends. Neither sound convinced. When you return to your dugout, the fire's gone out. The cook is missing, probably crouching behind the latrine, screaming into his apron. The sky is getting darker again, though it's still morning. It's always either dusk or storm here. Never daylight, just shades of grey turning to black. New guy shows up, boots too clean, eyes too wide. He asks, "What's for breakfast?" Everyone stares at him like he's just announced he's royalty. You hand him a tin. Breakfast was yesterday. This is survival. He eats it anyway, because hunger beats pride every time. That afternoon, a shell lands on the trench wall 15 meters away. No casualties, but the blast covers everything. Your coat, your face, your tin bowl, with a fresh coat of dirt and someone's spleen. Probably, you clean your bowl with a rag you found under your cot. You're pretty sure it used to be someone's sock. You don't care, it works. The man next to you finds a beetle in his tea. He names it Corporal Crunch and keeps it in his pocket. Everyone approves. It's the closest thing to a pet anyone has had in weeks. The evening is worse, because that's when the shelling starts again, in earnest. It always does. Like they wait until you've settled, until you're warm, until your stomach isn't growling. Then the sky opens up and the noise begins. Your body knows the sound now. The high pitch of flight, the hollow impact, the breathless moment just before something explodes. Your muscles tense in rhythm, as if trained by the orchestra of war. You huddle in the dugout, clutching your now empty teacup like it's a relic from a past life. Someone recites a joke. It doesn't land. Someone else mutters a prayer. No one laughs at that. You think about breakfast again, about toast, about jam, about mornings that weren't heralded by shrapnel and the scent of rot. You think about how breakfast used to be comfort. Here, it's just a countdown until someone starts screaming. You lie down and try to sleep. The rat curls up near your feet. The beetle climbs the wall, and in the distance, a shell whistles. Tomorrow's breakfast is already on its way. At some point, you stop screaming when you see the rats, not because they get any smaller, if anything, they're bulking up, but because you've accepted a simple fact. You no longer live in a trench. You live in their trench. You're just the tenant. They're the landlords, and the rent is your dignity. They come at night mostly, though night is an abstract concept when you haven't seen a proper sunrise in weeks. First, it's the sound. A scuffle in the corner, the wet slap of paws against mud, the unmistakable crunch of something alive chewing on something that used to be alive. Then you see them, their eyes, reflective, cold, judging. One drags half, a biscuit you thought you'd hidden. Another makes eye contact while sitting atop your helmet like it's a throne. You don't shoo him away. You just nod. He won. Fair and square. You once had boundaries. Now the rat nest under your cot is just part of the neighborhood. Someone named one of them Corporal Squeaks. He shows up during roll call more reliably than your actual corporal. The men share stories about how he bit the sergeant's boot, about how he fought off another rat for a slice of ham, about how he dragged a cigarette butt into the latrine like a war trophy. Morale is low. But Corporal Squeaks, he's thriving. Then there are the lice. Ah, the lice. They're less dramatic than the rats, but more personal. The rats steal your food. The lice steal your soul. They live in your seams, your collar, the folds of your uniform. You scratch so often, your body becomes a roadmap of irritation. Your skin flakes like dried parchment. Your fingernails stay black, with trench grime and blood from itches scratched too hard, too often. You try boiling your clothes. Doesn't work. You try picking them off. Doesn't work. You try pretending they're not there. That sort of works. Until you wake up to find two lice tangoing on your forearm like they're celebrating something. You try to crush them. One escapes. The other laughs. You swear it does. The lice bite your scalp. They bite your legs. They bite the spot just below. Your ribs that you can't reach anymore because your back has permanently curled into the shape of despair. There are treatments, technically, a powder, a wash, a prayer. But you gave up hope around the same time you gave up underwear. Now you just scratch and mumble to yourself like the rest. One guy snapped, shaved his head, burned his blanket, screamed at the rats. They gave him a medal, not for bravery, just to keep him quiet. Your bunkmate, Gilles, names his lice. He keeps a tally scratched into his mess tin. 42 last week, 58 this week. He's calling it a trend. He says they're unionizing. You're not sure if he's joking. You once asked the quartermaster for clean bedding. He laughed so hard, he coughed up something that might have been a lung. Then he gave you an extra spoon and told you to dig your own comfort. You use the spoon now as a lice scraper. Effective. Demeaning. A solid metaphor for trench life. The only upside is that the rats eat the lice, and the lice bite the rats. It's a sort of biological Cold War going on around you, inside your clothing, under your skin. You're just the unfortunate battleground. Some nights, when the shelling stops, and the moaning fades, and it's just quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, you swear you can hear the lice whispering strategies, tiny generals plotting the next offensive. You scratch anyway. Because what else can you do? The chaplain says to pray. You try, but it's hard to focus on salvation when something's nesting behind your knee. You try to sleep. You cover your face with your cap, hoping it keeps the rats from licking your teeth in the night. Yes, that happened once. You woke up screaming. The rat looked offended. You lie there in the dark. Scratch, shuffle, breathe, scratch again. You share space with mud, vermin, mildew, and madness. You're never truly alone. You can't be. Not with all these legs crawling around. And yet, it's normal now. That's the worst part. The normalization of filth. The acceptance of horror. You don't remember what clean feels like. You dream of soap the way others dream of home. You once promised yourself, when the war's over, I'll take a bath every day. Now you just hope your lice find new hosts when you die. You close your eyes, you scratch your ankle. A rat settles on your chest like a purring stone, and you sleep. Because tomorrow, you'll wake up in the same hole, next to the same men, wearing the same infested coat, and pretending once again that this is fine. You wake up scratching. Not because you're itchy. That would suggest it's occasional. This is chronic. This is soul deep. This is a full-body performance of discomfort, starring you as that guy with trench fever and an emotional support rat. Your fingernails are blunt now, worn down not from digging or fighting, but from nightly combat with tiny six-legged nightmares. The lice have evolved. They're smarter, more coordinated. One of them evaded capture 3 nights in a row and bit your eyelid out of spite. The corporal says it's a rite of passage. Everyone gets them. Everyone keeps them. Everyone learns to stop screaming when one crawls across their collarbone mid-sentence. The rookie next to you cried the first time it happened. Now he just flicks them into the soup. No one complains, because the lice are part of the soup. Meanwhile, the rats grow bold. Last night, one stole an entire tin of corned beef off someone's lap. Just dragged it off into the shadows like it paid rent. Nobody stopped it. Nobody wanted to. That rat's killed more fleas than any medic. He's a hero. You'd name a trench after him if you thought command would approve. This morning, you saw 2 rats fighting over a dead pigeon. You cheered for the smaller one. It won. You felt oddly proud. Later, you shared your biscuit crumbs with it. You're not sure if that makes you compassionate or just broken. Probably both. Lice. You can almost forgive. They're part of the uniform now. But the rats? They're terrifyingly human. You've seen them pull open packs. You've watched one chew through a can lid. One climbed into Private Lefebvre's boot and refused to come out. He hobbled around with the rat inside for 2 hours. When he finally took the boot off, the rat just looked at him and crawled into someone else's bedroll. And somehow, nobody considered this strange. Because nothing is strange anymore. Not when the lice are smarter than your commanding officer. Not When the rats bring back spoils from no man's land, buttons, torn cloth, a silver spoon with mother's love engraved on the handle, you wonder what they're building. You hope it's not a second trench. You can't compete with that. The chaplain holds a service each week. He prays for the dead. Then he prays for the living. Then he prays for the lice, because even God's smallest creatures deserve mercy. Someone asked if that included the rats. The chaplain didn't answer. You assume it was a no-hygiene lectures happen twice a month. A sergeant gathers everyone, reads from a pamphlet about delousing powder, boiling water, and rotating your socks. He gives this speech while scratching his own shoulder so hard his fingernails draw blood. No one takes notes. No one has paper. Dias. Powder, when you get it, works for 2 days. Then the lice return. They always return. One night, you dream of your old bed, clean sheets, a wool blanket, no bites. You wake up mid-smile and find a rat nibbling your ear. You slap it. It squeaks in, outrage, then trots off like you've violated some ancient pact. The other rats glare at you from the corners. The lice double their efforts on your scalp. Your bunkmate mutters something about insurrection. You apologize to the rat the next day. You're not sure why. It just felt necessary. Some men try to fight back. One fashioned a flamethrower from a busted lantern and cooking oil, burned half the dugout and 3 coats before it sputtered out. He got 3 rats. Everyone agreed it wasn't worth it. Someone else tried to shave his entire body to get rid of the lice. He now looks like a pink eel and hasn't stopped shivering since. The lice returned in 48 hours. You start naming your infestation. Give them personalities. Gregor lives under your collar. Ambitious. Bites often. Lucille occupies your left shin. Mild-mannered. Bit you twice but apologized through vibes. Maurice is the worst. He hides, waits, then attacks when you're most vulnerable. Usually, mid-biscuit. You hate Maurice. You'd write him a breakup letter if you thought he'd read it. By the end of the week, you stop mentioning the bugs. You just accept that your body isn't yours anymore. It's a transit hub for parasites. A buffet. A failing democracy ruled by fleas and overseen by aggressive rodents. And still, you live. Because dying of disgust isn't an option. And because despite everything, you're still holding on to the one piece of hope they can't chew through. The belief that maybe, just maybe one day this will all end. You'll get deloused. You'll burn your uniform. You'll bathe in something that isn't your own tears. Until then, you scratch. You shuffle. You keep the rats at arm's length, unless they bring biscuits. And you sleep with one eye open, because you never know who's crawling over you tonight. There's something uniquely awful about trench stench. It's not one smell. It's a collection. A grotesque orchestra of decay, playing the same sour note on loop, like some sadistic French perfume named Eau de Despair. You don't just smell it. You wear it. You breathe it. It becomes part of you, like a second skin made of mildew, death, and regret. And the worst part? You can't remember what clean smells like. It's been so long since anything pleasant crossed your nose that your brain starts inventing memories. You catch a whiff of rotting turnip and think, for half a second, of apple pie. Then the wind shifts and all hope is lost. Rot is the bass note. It's everywhere. Rotting food, rotting fabric, rotting morale, rotting bodies. Sometimes above ground, sometimes buried so shallowly they try to crawl back up after a rain. You've learned to stop checking where the smell's coming from. It's from everywhere. It is everything. The latrine situation doesn't help. At the start, they tried to be civilized. Dug pits, built little walls, lined them with boards, called them toilets, like they were anything more than glorified holes in the earth filled with communal failure. But then, the shells came, and the rats, and the weather, and before long, the trench itself became the toilet. There's a stretch near your sector known unofficially as Shit Corner. It has its own microclimate, slightly warmer, always damp. You hold your breath when passing through, which is difficult when it takes a full minute and your lungs already function like soggy bellows. And then there are the socks. They were once wool, possibly white. Now they resemble biological experiments. They smell like betrayal. You take them off once a week to wring them out. The liquid that comes out is black. You put them back on anyway, because going barefoot would be worse. You think, your neighbor Collins swears his socks once tried to crawl away on their own. You laughed. Then you saw one twitch. The uniforms don't fare better. Yours was brown. Now it's trench-coloured, which is to say, stained with every fluid known to man and a few that defy classification. The armpits have evolved a scent so powerful it could be weaponized. You try not to lift your arms. The blankets. Don't. Ask. The last time someone aired one out, 3 men fainted and a rat died. There was a full investigation. The conclusion was hazardous but traditional. The blanket remained. And the men. Oh, the men. You love them. You hate them. You live elbow to elbow with them, breathing in each other's sweat, snoring, farts, and occasional bursts of despair. Private Durand has a foot fungus so aggressive it smells like vinegar and war crimes. He takes off his boots and the entire dugout clears out like someone lobbed a gas canister. Once, someone did. The gas smelled better. The cook boils cabbage, onions, and despair in the same pot. Every meal smells like someone made soup out of sadness. You eat it anyway, because the only thing worse than the smell is the hunger. Cigarettes help, a bit, not because they smell good, they don't, but because they temporarily replace whatever ungodly aroma was in your nose before. You puff on one, and suddenly the trench smells like burning paper and old leaves instead of mildew and human sorrow. You used to find the smell of smoke offensive. Now it's comfort. Now it's hope. Now it's the scent of escape, even if only for 5 minutes. You light up in the corner of the trench, surrounded by mud and misery, and you can almost pretend the world makes sense. Then a rat farts, a man vomits, and someone sets fire to their sleeve trying to relight a damp match. Back to reality. Rain makes it worse. You didn't think that was possible. But wet trench, that's a special flavour. It activates everything, like a miserable stew that simmers the stink into a concentrated form. The latrine leaks. The socks ferment. The dead rise metaphorically, and sometimes literally, with the floodwater. Everything smells like rot. Even the officers. Even the sky. Even you. And there's no escape. You dream of your mother's kitchen, of lavender, of freshly baked bread. Then you wake up to a boot in your face and the smell of whatever Private Renard had for dinner now bubbling in the corner. The trench is many things. Wet, cold, loud, terrifying. But above all, it is pungent. It is the smell of eternal Tuesday. Because every day here feels like a Tuesday, a middle of the week. Nothing ever gets better. Mold in the corner kind of Tuesday. You don't remember what Sunday smells like, or a Friday. Just this. Just endless, festering, damp disappointment. And maybe someday, when the war ends and you return home and someone hands you a flower or fresh soap or a warm pastry, your nose will twitch, your brain will hesitate, and you'll think, for one brief second, something's wrong, because it won't smell like rot, and you won't trust it, because once the trench has claimed your nose, it never gives it back. You know it's a bad day when the best smelling thing in the trench is you, and you smell like wet leather, crusted porridge, and the kind of sweat that comes from trying not to cry while digging a latrine in the rain. The stench doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in, the way water seeps into your boots. Slow, methodical, and deeply personal. First, it's the faint smell of mildew. Then, something sour. Then, something else. You try to name it, but your vocabulary wasn't built for this. You never learned words like decaying optimism. Someone farts 3 men down. No one reacts. Not because they're polite, but because it barely registers anymore. The wind carries far worse. The latrines overflowed last night. Again, the pit was supposed to be temporary. But temporary in trench terms means until morale improves. And since morale was last seen fleeing to Switzerland, it's still there. Sloshing, bubbling, creeping into everything. Your breakfast tastes like whatever the latrine's thinking about. You consider eating it anyway. Hunger is persuasive. Pride is optional. The corporal passes by with a new recruit. He makes the mistake of inhaling. The sound he makes is somewhere between a sob and a sneeze. He throws up on his boots. Nobody mocks him. Everyone just nods. Welcome to the meat stew of the senses. The cook tries to mask it all by burning something in a can. He says it's sage. It smells like desperation and shoe polish. You appreciate the effort, even if it makes things worse. Then there's the dead. The ones no one got to in time. Not enemy, not friend, just former people. The kind that collapsed in the mud and got swallowed by time, war, and 1,000 unreturned letters. You pass one on the way to the watch post. You think his name was Bernard, or Bertrand. You never asked. His face is mostly gone now anyway. He's part of the wall, part of the trench. A warning or a monument, depending on how poetic you're feeling that day. And no matter what side the wind blows from, he finds you. At night, the damp gets worse. It thickens the air like soup. Only if soup smelled like rot, iron, and your mother's tears. Your blanket is soaked. Your socks are a war crime. You're fairly certain your pillow is a fungal colony with voting rights. You try to breathe through your mouth, but that just gives the stench a direct path to your soul. The sergeant says, you get used to it. He's lying. He's also the same man who claimed the lice only bite you if you think about them. You once thought you smelled something sweet, something floral. You almost cried. Turns out it was a broken bottle of embalming fluid. One of the medics dropped it during triage. The patient died. The smell lingered. You stood nearby for 20 minutes pretending you were in a garden. That was the closest you've had to joy since the war began. You keep a handkerchief tied around your neck. Not because it does anything, just because it makes you feel like you're trying. You soak it in coffee once, then tie it over your nose. Now you smell like burnt beans and failure. It's a mild improvement. The chaplain swings by, says he's bringing hope. You wish it came in powder form, something you could sprinkle over the latrine trench and bury 6 feet deep. Someone once tried lighting incense. The rats stole it. Someone else tried masking everything with tobacco smoke. He lit a pipe, took 2 puffs, and a shell exploded nearby, flinging him 10 feet sideways. The pipe survived. He didn't. Now the pipe floats around, passed from man to man, as if it holds some kind of protective charm. You inhale from it once. It tastes like ash, blood, and very faintly, cherries? You consider proposing to the pipe. The worst part isn't even the stench itself. It's how you forget what anything else smells like. You can't remember soap. You can't remember fresh bread. You can't remember your sister's perfume or your dog's fur or the smell of spring rain on cobblestones. All you have now is mud, smoke, damp, death, and dreams of things you're not even sure were real. At night, you dream of cleanliness. You dream of opening a window. You dream of a bar of soap that lathers in soft circles and doesn't judge you. But in the morning, you wake up, peel your face off the moldy corner of your blanket, and start the same routine. Scrape boots, swat lice, gag lightly, pretend it's fine. The smell never leaves. It just becomes background. Like the rats, like the fear, like the sounds of someone sobbing under their breath while writing a letter they'll never send. You used to write letters too. Now you just scratch your name in the dirt beside you. Not so anyone remembers, just so you don't forget. You fall asleep that night with a rat snuggled against your shin, a sock stuffed in your collar, and the smell of eternal Tuesday wrapped around you like a second skin. You will never be clean again. But maybe, just maybe, you'll get used to it. Eventually. There's always screaming. Sometimes it's distant, a high-pitched wail drifting through the damp morning fog like a gull caught in a mousetrap. Other times it's right next to you, raw, cracked, desperate. You don't flinch anymore. You just glance, assess, and mentally file it under "not me." Yet, you've developed a kind of sound filter. Not intentionally. Just something your brain does so it doesn't collapse in on itself like a wet sandbag. You can now distinguish between different types of screams. A leg wound has a sharp, panicked bark, like someone surprised by their own betrayal. A gut wound is lower, groaning, resigned, more prayer than panic. But none of them stop. Not really. Because the dying here don't just die. They linger, gurgle, moan. Sometimes they sing. Not songs, no. Just broken fragments of lullabies, or names of people they haven't seen in years. Once, a man died whispering "apricot jam" over and over until the blood filled his lungs and drowned the sentence. And once you've heard that, really heard it, it never goes away. It burrows into your memory like a trench rat, sets up a hammock, and plays it on loop every time you close your eyes. Even silence is loud now. It's never actual silence, just the absence of the louder horrors, the kind of quiet that hums, that vibrates in your skull like something's about to happen, like the earth is holding its breath and you're too stupid to do the same. There's the constant sound of wet, drips, sloshes, that sucking noise boots make when pulled from muck too sticky to be mud and too foul to be water. And every now and then, that soft, unmistakable thwip of a rat slipping into something it shouldn't be in. One night, you woke to a squelch and thought it was a dying man coughing up blood. Nope, just someone stepping in soup. It was the worst version of relief. Then there are the shells. Oh, the shells. They don't whistle like the movies tell you. Not always. Sometimes they roar. Sometimes they hiss. Sometimes it's a pop followed by a second or two of dead air. And then the earth explodes near your head and your soul tries to flee through your spine. You learn to count the seconds between launch and impact. It's a skill no one teaches, but everyone learns. You're up to 4 now. Anything past that, you assume it's not for you. The worst are the ones you don't hear, because they're the ones meant for you. The medic says you've got concussive tinnitus. You say that's just trench French for forever ringing. Your ears haven't stopped buzzing in 2 weeks. It's like a mosquito nested in your skull and is very angry about your lifestyle choices. You try stuffing rags in your ears, then wax, then desperation. Nothing helps. You hear everything, always, but with just enough distortion to make you doubt reality. You once mistook a sneeze for a mortar. You flinched so hard you tore something in your back and spent 3 days lying on your side, watching a beetle crawl across a mouldy biscuit and wondering who had it worse, you or the biscuit. The men snore, loudly, wetly, with abandon. You used to be disgusted. Now you're just jealous, because it means they're asleep. It means, for at least a moment, they've left this place. You lie there, listening to the chorus of broken noses and night terrors, and wonder what you'd have to trade for a single, uninterrupted hour. Someone talks in their sleep. In German. He's not German. No one's sure what it means, but it's fluent. And that's concerning. And underneath it all, the screams, the bombs, the coughs, the drips, the sobs, the sizzle of boots on fire or rats gnawing through mess kits, is the sound. The sound that's always there, the one you only. Notice when everything else stops, the sound of dying. It's subtle, almost soft. It hums at the edge of hearing like a lullaby sung in reverse. You don't know how to explain it, you just know it's there, and that one day, not today but someday, you'll add your voice to it. But not yet, because you have. Guard duty, because someone just threw up into the rain barrel again, because the sergeant's yelling and you're 97% sure it's at you, because war isn't fair, or glorious, or even logical, but it is loud. And so, with a sigh, you shove a rotting biscuit into your mouth, sling your rifle over your shoulder, and march back into the chorus. The symphony of screams continues. And you hum along. You wake up to screaming. Not metaphorical screaming, not memory screaming. No, real, tangible, throat-tearing screaming. The kind that peels the air apart like wet canvas and makes your bones twitch without permission. You roll over. It's Private Marcel. He's screaming because he's missing half a leg. And he's missing half a leg because someone thought it was a great idea to sleep with their boots on the parapet. And now the enemy knows where to aim again. The field is lit with flares, and somewhere in the haze, a machine gun is stuttering out death in little rhythmic taps, like it's keeping tempo for an invisible orchestra made entirely of pain. The medic drags Marcel back by his armpits. You get up to help. He doesn't stop screaming. Someone, maybe you, presses a rag to the stump. It doesn't help. The rag is mostly decorative at this point. A nod to civility, a polite lie in cloth form. You hold it anyway, because what else is there to do? Eventually the morphine kicks in, or maybe he passes out. Either way, the screaming stops. You take a deep breath, then gag, because someone else has just shit themselves in fear, and that's what heroism smells like around here. The rest of the day is all echoes. Every bang sounds like the last one. Every grunt is a ghost. You live inside a loop, a grim carnival ride that spins around trauma and deposits you gently back into your personal corner of hell with a souvenir case of survivor's guilt. You can't tell what's thunder and what's artillery anymore. You once ducked under cover from a particularly loud stomach growl. The rats have started moving louder too. You think they're getting bolder or heavier. One of them knocked over a mess tin last night, and 3 men drew bayonets. No one laughed. The corporal tried to lighten the mood by playing harmonica. He got halfway through La Marseillaise before someone lobbed a tin can at his head. You're not even sure who did it. But everyone silently agreed it was the right move. There are noises you dread more than others. One is the snap of a rifle bolt behind you, because that could mean someone's cleaning their weapon, or it could mean someone's had enough and wants to take someone with them. Either way, you don't ask. Another is coughing, deep coughing, wet coughing, the kind that vibrates ribs and ends in spit that's more red than clear. That kind of cough is the trench's death rattle, and once someone starts making it, you start giving them more space. Not because you're cruel, but because you're terrified. Private Renard's been coughing for 3 days now. He says he's fine. You've already moved your kit 5 feet away. He tries to make jokes. You try to laugh, but every sound is hollow now. Laughter doesn't echo here. It just drops, like a bullet that forgot how to kill. Then there's the bugle. Oh God, the bugle. It's always slightly off-key. The bugler lost part of his upper lip in a shelling accident, and ever since, every call sounds like a dying goose with performance anxiety. He tries his best, bless him, but when he plays Stand To in the morning, it feels more like panic lightly and question your life choices. There's also the occasional shriek from the horses. You don't like those. A man screaming. You can handle that. But a horse? Something about it breaks you a little. They don't understand. They weren't drafted. They didn't sign up. And when they scream, it's with every fiber of muscle and instinct saying, "This is wrong." One got stuck in the mud last week. They tried to dig it out. It kept screaming. Eventually, someone shot it. But the sound didn't stop. You keep hearing it, days later, layered into the thunder, tucked behind footsteps, curled up inside dreams. It haunts the edges of silence like it's waiting to be remembered. The priest said, "You should pray." You said you forgot how. Besides, God has terrible acoustics out here. Either he's not listening, or he's deliberately letting the symphony play out because he likes how it sounds. And still, through it all, you function. Because functioning is the only rebellion you have left. You reload. You eat. You write a letter you'll never send. You swap boots with a dying man because his pair has fewer holes. You nod when someone cries. You stare when someone laughs. You bury a boy who still had peach fuzz on his chin and didn't know how to shave yet. The next day, you do it again. Because the sound of dying is constant, but so is the rhythm of survival. It's a terrible beat, but you know the steps now. The crunch of gravel, the shuffle of boots, the muttered curses, the whispered apologies, the occasional heartbreaking gasp of someone who didn't expect to survive the night, but did anyway. And underneath it all, your own heartbeat. Still going, still defiant, still refusing, for now, to add itself to the chorus. You lie down that night on your damp, lice-ridden blanket, pull your helmet low, and listen to the night breathe. Somewhere, someone is screaming, but not you. Not yet. V2, canister lands with a sound you'll never forget, a kind of metallic thunk that doesn't belong here. It's not a shell, not a grenade. It's almost polite in how soft it lands, which makes it worse. You don't even see it at first, just hear it. Then someone shouts, "Not incoming," or "Take cover." But the more specific, bowel loosening, "Gas!" And that's when the real fun begins. You fumble for your mask like a man digging through his pockets for salvation. It's never where you think it is. You swore it was clipped to your pack, or your belt, or your soul. But now it's suddenly nowhere, and your hands are mudslick and shaking. You find it, you jam it on, and suddenly you're inhaling panic through rubber and fogged lenses, the inside of the mask smelling like stale breath and chemical regret. You're supposed to check the seal, supposed to stay calm, supposed to not breathe too deeply. You do none of that. Your buddy isn't so lucky. His mask strap snaps as he yanks it down. He holds it to his face with one hand while laughing. Because of course he laughs. You're both choking on fear and damp wool and the realization that nothing in this war was designed with humans in mind. The gas slithers in like a snake with a schedule. It hugs the ground, pale, greenish, almost pretty, in a sinister kind of way. Like a poisonous mist designed by an artist with unresolved trauma and a flair for the dramatic. You watch it roll in and think, for the briefest, stupidest moment, well, that's actually kind of lovely. Then someone screams. It's a wet, ugly scream, the kind that comes with coughing up bits of yourself. And suddenly the aesthetics don't matter. Men are tripping over each other. Some masks are on wrong. Some don't have masks at all. One poor bastard's trying to breathe through a sock soaked in urine. The old emergency method they told you about in training, like some deranged survival tip from a mad uncle. And you're breathing through your mask, eyes wide, behind fogged lenses, trying not to puke from the smell of your own recycled fear. The filter is probably expired. The rubber's cracking. The left strap keeps slipping. You hold your breath anyway, just in case. The thing about gas is that it doesn't rush. It creeps. It takes its time, like it knows there's nowhere to go. You can't outrun it, can't outshoot it. You just sit there and wait for your lungs to betray you. Private Lambert goes down. He wasn't even in your section, but now he's here, clawing at his throat, trying to scream with lungs that have turned into soup. His face is turning colours, yellow, then purple, then something not found in nature. No one helps, not because they don't care, but because what can you do? There's no antidote, no magic spell. Just hope your mask works and your body holds. Out. The sergeant is shouting instructions, but no one hears him. The gas doesn't care about ranks. It doesn't salute. It doesn't pause for orders. It just fills space, slowly and thoroughly, like guilt in a confessional booth. Your mouth is dry. Your chest hurts. You try to take shallow breaths. You sound like a haunted accordion. Every inhale tastes like metal and rubber bands. You glance at the others. Everyone's eyes are wide and blinking behind their lenses. You all look like terrified insects, mutant beetles in war coats, pretending this rubber bag strapped to your face is science instead of a suggestion. Someone farts loudly. Everyone pretends not to hear it. The gas doesn't. Eventually, slowly, it recedes. Not because of anything. You did. Not because anyone fought it off. just because the wind shifted and it got bored. And now it's clean-up time. 3 are dead, 2 are coughing blood, 1 doesn't speak anymore, just stares at the sky and mumbles something about a wedding cake. You're not sure if he's hallucinating or remembering or just trying to make the air feel less like poison. You take off your mask. The world smells like rot and tears and the inside of your own face. You're drenched in sweat. Your hands are shaking. Your mask has a bite mark on the edge. You don't remember doing that. Someone jokes, "Next time we charge the gas with bayonets." Someone else mutters, "Only if we get proper helmets and a priest on standby." And for a few seconds, you all laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's either that or scream. And you've already done enough of that for one morning. You spend the next few hours coughing. Not the polite kind of cough. Not a tickle. Not a clearing of the throat. No. This is the kind of cough that sounds like your lungs are trying to file for divorce. Each one shakes your ribs. Each one reminds you that something foreign tried to move in and stay a while. The medic says it's residual irritation. You say it's dying slowly, 1 wheeze at a time. No one laughs. Private Renard hasn't spoken since the gas hit. He just sits in the corner with his mask still on, even though the air's clear now. When someone tries to tug it off, he shrieks and starts swinging. You leave him be. Everyone agrees. Better a paranoid Renard than a dead one. You scrape the inside of your mask clean. It's lined with spit and fear. The filter is clogged with something that smells like regret. The straps are stretched. The rubber feels brittle. You try not to think about next time. There's always a next time. One of the officers comes by to check morale. He's clean-shaven. His boots are polished. He carries a clipboard like it's armor. He makes the mistake of asking if anyone wants to talk about their feelings. He's met with a silence so cold it might be considered weather. Eventually, someone says, "My feeling is that I'd like a new pair of lungs." Another adds, "And maybe a working mask," you offer, or at least some trousers that didn't betray me mid-attack. The officer writes something on his clipboard, nods awkwardly, and vanishes before anyone throws something heavier than sarcasm at him. The sergeant says gas is part of modern warfare. You'd like to punch modern warfare in the throat. The latest rumor is that the Germans have a new blend, something worse, thicker, clings to skin like guilt, eats through cloth like acidic soup. They call it White Cross or Blue Heaven or the Kiss. No one knows what it does exactly. You're not eager to find out. You try to practice holding your breath. The record so far is 42 seconds before someone passes out and lands face first in a puddle that may or may not contain a piece of foot. You declare the game over. No one objects. Someone suggests painting the gas masks to look like animals. You know, so we don't scare the children. Someone else replies, "We are the children." You stop talking after that. At night, you dream about the gas, not the look of it, the sound. It has a sound, a hiss, a soft, crawling exhale that doesn't stop. It sounds like a whisper through wet gauze. You wake up convinced it's coming back. You press your mask to your face and try to breathe through plastic nightmares. You stop trusting the wind. Every breeze feels like a threat. Every gust a trap. You used to enjoy wind. It meant movement. Now it just means distribution. The air is no longer your friend, it's a courier, and what it delivers is never kind. You used to believe death came with noise, a bang, a scream, a shout. Gas taught you otherwise. Death can come quiet. Death can come soft. Death can come in a cloud so light it floats like perfume and still finds its way into your lungs like a lie you chose to believe. Private Duran doesn't believe in gas masks anymore. Says if it's your time, it's your time. Says he'd rather die breathing fresh air than choking behind rubber and straps, and the stale scent of his own panic. He says this while using his gas mask as a urinal. You try not to argue. Everyone copes in their own way. You've taken to writing letters you'll never send. One to your sister, apologizing for stealing her perfume. One to your school teacher, admitting you never finished that final exam. One to a woman you barely remember from back home, telling her she smelled like clean laundry and everything the war is not. You fold the letters and stuff them into a biscuit tin under your cot. You hope someone finds them one day and understands. The masks are stored in rows now, hanging from hooks like morbid decorations. You polish yours, not because it helps, just because it's something to do with your hands. When a new recruit arrives, wide-eyed and too clean, the first thing you tell him is, "Your gas mask is your wife now. Treat it better than your boots and your bladder." He laughs. You don't. 2 weeks later, he won't either, because that's what the gas does. It turns boys into ghosts, turns air into weapons, turns breath into a risk assessment. And when the canisters fall again, and they will, you'll do the same dance, the same scramble, the same primal theatre of fumbling straps and silent prayers, because in the end, that's all a gas mask really is, a rubber coin flip. And you're always betting on borrowed time. Mail arrives. That sentence alone is enough to break half the men in the trench. Not because of the anticipation. No. Anticipation is a distant memory, like taste or warmth. It's because mail is a reminder that the outside world still believes in things like civility, breakfast tables, and the passing of seasons. A bag drops onto the makeshift post station, really just a wet crate nailed to a wetter plank. A corporal flips through envelopes like he's dealing cards in a rigged game of despair. Names are called. Some men light up. Others flinch. One just laughs, short and bitter, like someone who just remembered they're technically still alive. You get a letter from your mother. Of course it's your mother. Mothers write like they can reach you across time and war and unthinkable filth. Like love can be mailed in an envelope and survive mustard gas. You tear it open with filthy fingers. It smells faintly like the life you left behind, like lavender soap and pastry dough and a world that never prepared you for anything sharper than disappointment. You read. She writes about roses blooming in the garden, about your little sister winning a spelling prize, about how the neighbours got a new goat and it's simply adorable. She says she's knitting you socks and hopes they'll keep your feet warm. She says, "Be brave, be safe, we miss you." You reread the line about roses, then look down. Your boots are submerged in 2 inches of mud. Something, maybe a toe, maybe not, floats by. You haven't seen a flower in 6 months. You haven't smelled something sweet since a rat chewed through a medic's satchel and punctured a bottle of antiseptic. You cry into your helmet. Not a loud sob, not a breakdown. Just quiet, involuntary tears leaking out the sides of your soul and pooling where your chin rests against dented steel. Next to you, someone throws up in their helmet. No one comments on either event. It's a normal morning. Private Fournier reads his letter and starts laughing. He says his fiancée's joined a theatre troupe. She plays a flower fairy now. She enclosed a photo, her in glitter and wings, smiling like the war is just a distant rumour. Fournier folds the letter into a tiny square and shoves it into his shirt like a talisman. Then he whispers, "She's not real anymore, is she?" You don't answer, because you know what he means. Mail from home is like reaching through fog and touching a ghost. It's a reminder that while you're living in mud, others are living in metaphors. They speak of pies cooling on windowsills. You haven't had something baked in an oven since you burned a biscuit over a candle and called it celebration toast. Corporal LeMay got a letter too. His wife writes that the harvest is good this year, that the baby started walking, that the village finally fixed that pothole he always complained about. He reads it aloud, every word like a joke told in the wrong language. He smiles the whole time, then eats the letter. No one stops him. It's probably the cleanest thing he's consumed in weeks. The mailbag empties. Some names aren't called. Some will never be called again. One man gets 6 letters. They're all addressed to his brother. He doesn't correct the mistake, just sits with the stack in his lap, whispering the words with a voice he hasn't used in months. Later, you see him tucking them into the wall of the trench like offerings to gods no one believes in anymore. Then there are the official letters, typed, sealed, always brief. Those are death notes, regret to inform. Valiant service, condolences. They come in pairs, one for the man, one for his family, delivered like bookends to a life that's already collapsed in the middle. Private Vautrin got his own death letter once. Mix-up in the records. He read it, nodded, and said, "Well, at least they'll think I went quickly." Then he folded it, neatly, tucked it into his sock, and went back to cleaning his rifle. Some men beg for letters, others dread them. You're not sure which camp you fall into anymore. You read your mother's again. She asks if you've been sleeping. You laugh. You don't sleep. You doze. You flinch in 8-minute intervals, while dreaming about rats learning to speak and asking you for a light. She says she's proud. You try to believe her. But your uniform is a sponge. Your boots smell like betrayal. And the last thing you remember feeling proud of was hitting a tin can from 30 yards using a rock and unfiltered spite. The mail is gone now. Just scraps remain. Torn. Paper. Lost words. A corner of an envelope with someone's name half legible under a muddy boot print. You pocket it. You don't know why. Maybe just to prove that someone, somewhere, once remembered a soldier's name, even if the war already forgot the rest of him. You spend the rest of the day thinking about pie. Not just any pie. Your mother's apple pie. The one with the cinnamon sugar crust and that slight, uneven patch where she always patched a hole with extra dough and said it was the lucky bite. You can see it in your head, smell it, almost taste it. Then Private Lambert coughs a chunk of himself into the mud next to you, and the dream dies, gasping. Mail does this to you. It rewires your brain. For a few stolen minutes, you remember how to be a person. Not a weapon, not a number, not a breathing mud ornament with digestive issues. Just a son, a brother, maybe even a boy who used to run barefoot through a field and believe the worst thing in life was missing supper. Then the war reminds you, gently at first, then with boots, that you are none of those things anymore. You're a man-shaped placeholder, and the only pie you're getting is metaphorical and made entirely of lies and mildew. You try to write a reply. You pull out the soggy stationery they gave you last month, the one that smells like bleach and bureaucracy. You press it against a dry patch of plank and hold your pencil like it's made of glass. "Dear Mother," you begin. Then you sit there. Because what do you write? "Dear Mother, the trench smells like fermented despair and someone's knee got eaten by rats last Tuesday. Dear Mother, my friend tried to shoot himself in the foot to go home and missed. Twice. Dear Mother, I watched a man die coughing up pink foam and all I could think was, at least he doesn't have to eat tonight's soup." No, you write, "Thank you for the socks." That's it. Just that. You stare at the words for a long time. Then, you fold the paper carefully and slide it back into your coat pocket. Maybe you'll finish it later. Maybe not. The gesture felt more important than the truth. Collins got a postcard from his sister. It's got flowers on the front. He tacked it to the wall of the dugout, right next to a drawing someone made of a woman reclining provocatively next to a bottle of wine and a roasted chicken. You think the chicken's wearing lingerie. Hard to tell. The flowers seem out of place, too bright, too hopeful, like they're mocking everything with colour. Sometimes you catch men staring at it like they're trying to remember what colour feels like. Other times, you stare too. The medic got nothing today. That's unusual. He usually gets 3 or 4. From family, from patients' mothers, from strangers who somehow think that the man applying bandages in hell is somehow less damaged than everyone else. He says he doesn't mind. But you notice he polishes his scalpel a little longer that evening. The cook, on the other hand, got 3 letters, all from the same girl. She draws hearts in the margins and signs off with lipstick kisses. He keeps them in a tin of tea leaves and takes them out whenever someone starts crying during dinner. He reads them aloud in a voice that doesn't match his own. Softer, younger, not yet singed by explosions and undercooked despair. He reads until the soup stops bubbling and the men stop twitching. And for 5 minutes the war feels very far away. You don't ask if she's real. Some magic should stay unexamined. One letter made it into the latrine. No one knows how, but it floated, there for a while like an unwanted truth. Words smudged and paper swollen, a final indignity carried out by the same universe that thought trench warfare and poetry should share a century. And then, as if on cue, the rain comes back. Of course it does. You scramble to cover what letters remain, tucking them into boots, undershirts, inside helmets. Water doesn't care about your emotional connections. It just wants to ruin paper. Ruin everything. Private Baptiste shouts, "They should print the letters on tin next time." Someone else suggests etching them into bayonets. The chaplain says, "You could memorize them." No one listens to him. You fall asleep that night, rereading the line about the garden. Your mother says the roses are early this year. You imagine red blooms nodding in the breeze, petals perfect, untouched by rot or gas or shrapnel. You imagine walking barefoot through the soil, the sun warm on your neck, bees humming politely in the background. Then something explodes 3 trenches over, and the ground shakes, and a man screams, and you realize you've chewed half your letter in your sleep. It still tastes faintly of lavender. You cry again, not from sadness, from the cruelty of it all, from the fact that the war hasn't killed your memories yet, just wrapped them in barbed wire and handed them back. You lie, awake for a long time. Eventually, you whisper into your collar, "Thank you for the socks," and hope, wherever she is, your mother hears it, because she sent you love, sealed in paper, and all you can send back is survival. The whistle blows. It's a sharp, shrill sound that slices through your skull and triggers a deeply embedded reflex. Panic dressed up as duty. You don't even think. You just move. Because not moving gets you shot by the people behind you. Moving gets you shot by the people in front. It's less a choice and more of a buffet of bad endings. You pick the one that's forward-facing and slightly more theatrical. You go over the top, clamber, scramble, stumble. Your boots don't grip. The mud pulls at your legs like it wants to keep you here, whispering, "It's safer down there. We have rats. You know the rats. The rats understand you." But no. Up you go. The sky is grey. Of course it is. The battlefield, if you can call it that, stretches out ahead like a graveyard that got too ambitious. Craters, barbed wire, smoking holes, twitching shapes that used to be men and now mostly just qualify as remains. Bullets start singing immediately. It's not a melody. More of a percussion section. Fast, relentless, very motivated. You duck, then remember you're supposed to be charging, which is to say, upright, loud, and entirely available for target practice. You trip on a corpse. Your face lands in something that squishes. You don't look at what it is. You just stand back up and scream. You don't remember what you screamed. Maybe a name, maybe a curse, maybe just a raw vowel aimed at God. Doesn't matter. The noise gets swallowed by gunfire and the screams of better men with worse luck. Private. Renard is running next to you. You know this because he's shouting, "Why are we running?" You want to say, "I don't know," but you're too busy dodging a shell crater and a piece of someone's boot still attached to a foot. A man, too. Your left is carrying the standard. He's waving it like a torch at a demon. A bullet takes him through the chest. The flag keeps flying for a second, then drops like a disappointed parent. The officer is ahead, blowing his whistle like it'll protect him. You watch him disappear in a puff of dirt and what might be teeth. The whistle continues for another few seconds, lodged somewhere inappropriate, before finally going mercifully silent. There's barbed wire ahead. Of course there is. Because why wouldn't there be? It stretches across the field like regret. Tangled. Sharp. Impossible. You didn't bring wire cutters. No one brings wire cutters. That's a luxury reserved for another regiment, or a bureaucrat's fever dream. You try to vault it. It catches your coat. You tumble, roll, rip free, leave a piece of yourself behind, and come up face to face with a man who's been dead long enough to not mind the company. You keep running, because stopping means dying. Running also means dying. But it's the thought that counts. The machine guns are loving this. They're positioned perfectly, slightly elevated, dry, smug. You can almost hear them chuckling as they spit steel into the field. One of them pivots toward your cluster, and you see the man ahead of you jerk, twitch, then collapse like a marionette whose puppeteer just got bored. You run past him, because you have to, because looking down might mean stopping. And you already did that once today, on a corpse. Someone throws a grenade. It's probably one of yours. You don't care. It explodes behind you, and now your ears are ringing again. Just in case you forgot what eternal tinnitus feels like. The shrapnel misses. You're not sure if you're lucky or just late to your own funeral. There's a tree up ahead, a real one, or what's left of it. Blackened, shattered, angry. You dive behind it anyway. You and 3 others. Breathing hard. Mud in your mouth. Someone's bleeding. Everyone's bleeding. One man has a broken helmet and is holding it together with both hands, as if he believes that will somehow keep his skull inside. You all look at each other. No one speaks. Because what do you say? Nice weather? Good charge? Anyone seen my optimism? Eventually, someone laughs. It's short, bitter, hysterical. The others join in, not because it's funny, but because laughter is. The only sound you can make that isn't screaming. You peek around the tree. The trench you came from is smoking. The machine guns are still chatting among themselves, pleased. Half your unit is still out there, crawling, limping, dying, dissolving into the dirt. You wipe mud from your face and realize it's not all mud. Some of it is red. Some of it isn't yours. None of it matters, because the next whistle is coming, and you'll do it again. Eventually, the shooting slows. Not stops. It never truly stops, but slows enough for you to hear your own breath again. It's wheezing, shallow, ragged. Your ribs feel like they've been stomped on by God's own hobnailed boot. You're still crouched behind what's generously being called a tree, which at this point is mostly splinters held together by spite. You're alive, which is not the same as lucky. Private Fournier is lying next to you. He's not moving, but his eyes are open. You ask if he's hit. He blinks once, slowly, then says, "I lost my biscuit." That's it. That's the whole update. You assume it's shock, or maybe just trench logic. One moment you're charging into hell, the next you're emotionally devastated about a pocket snack. The sergeant scrambles over a crater and drops next to you, his helmet askew and bleeding from a nick above his ear. He starts counting. 7, 8, 9. Where's LeMay? No one answers. The sergeant stops asking, because questions like that have a way of answering themselves, usually with a distant explosion and a flying boot. Another whistle blows. You almost vomit. Your body flinches automatically, legs twitching, spine bracing like it's been trained by Pavlov's worst possible cousin. But this time, it's not your charge. Another section, somewhere to your left. You hear the shouting, then the screaming, then the silence. That silence is always the worst. You peek around the edge of the tree. The field is a stew now, churned mud and twitching limbs, and the occasional untouched man lying flat and very still, too scared to move, too smart to run. The machine guns start up again. New victims, new names, new letters that will never be written. And here you are, pressed into the dirt, too exhausted to run, too numb to cry, and too muddy to qualify as human. The plan, you later hear, was to push forward and take the ridge. That ridge is still 50 meters away. No one made it past 30. They say the officer who ordered the charge had a map. They say the map was upside down. They say he's back in a tent, sipping tea and polishing his excuses, while men he's never met are bleeding into a foreign meadow for an inch of land they'll lose again next week. You wipe your face. It doesn't help. You're not sure if it's sweat blood, or just the kind of grime that seeps in through your pores and starts charging rent. Fournier suddenly sits up and says, "Isn't this what bravery feels like?" You look at him. He's holding a shovel like a rifle and grinning in a way that makes you think maybe he's gone full surrealist. You nod. Because what else can you do? The sun finally shows its face, which is rude considering the massacre. It hits the field just right and glints off broken helmets, rusting barbed wire, and a bayonet sticking out of a man who doesn't need it anymore. It's almost beautiful, like a painting of hell hung in a nice gallery, and just as quickly, clouds return. A shell hits somewhere behind you. Mud rains down. You don't even duck. There's talk of retreat. Not officially, of course. Officers never say retreat. They say things like strategic repositioning or reconsolidation of units for optimal deployment. But the truth is, you're going back. What's left of you? Whoever can still walk, crawl, or be dragged. You stand, legs trembling, rifle useless, soul somewhere behind you, stuck in the mud with that guy who tripped and never got up. You walk back across the field, past the bodies, past the crater you dove into, past the man who's still whispering prayers in a language no one speaks anymore. You step over limbs like roots, avoid helmets like stepping stones. Someone groans and reaches for your ankle. You flinch, spin, raise your rifle. It's a kid, can't be more than 16. He's not from your unit, he's barely got a uniform, just eyes wide with terror and a hole in his gut you could fit your fist through. You don't know his name. He's still breathing. You kneel beside him, whisper something. You don't remember what, and press your last bit of bandage too. His stomach like it'll help. He thanks you, then dies. You sit there for a minute, then stand again, because the trench is calling, and you're not dead yet. You make it back. Barely. Your boots weigh 5 kilos each. Your hands won't unclench. Your jaw aches from grinding teeth you didn't know you still had. Someone offers you soup. You take it. It tastes like ash and metal, and the inside of your helmet. You drink it anyway. Fournier sits next to you and says, "We almost got the ridge." You both laugh. You laugh long and hard and ugly, because the only thing more absurd than the war is surviving it. A miracle is announced. The kind of news that spreads faster than trench gossip or lice. There's a cleaning station. You blink. You stare. You whisper the word aloud like it's made of gold. Bath. You haven't had one in weeks? Months? You don't know. Time lost meaning around the third time your socks developed a personality. But now there's talk of water, of soap, of a place where filth doesn't cling to your spine like a parasitic overcoat. You imagine steam rising from a basin, hot water maybe, a brush perhaps. You picture yourself clean. You fantasize about skin that doesn't itch and hair that doesn't feel like moss. You imagine wiping the war off your body like it's just another layer of mud. You were so naive. The cleaning station is a shack, and that's generous. It's a crooked lean-to made of warped wood, sandbags, and sadness. Inside are 4 men, 1 bucket, and a sponge that has definitely been through things it doesn't talk about anymore. You line up behind 20 others, trying not to breathe too hard. The air inside the shack smells like wet burlap, forgotten, meat, and the collective shame of everyone who came before you. Private Collins comes out before you. He looks defeated, not refreshed, not restored, just spiritually mauled. He walks past without speaking. You try to meet his eyes. He doesn't have any left, just vacant holes where dreams used to live. Your turn, you enter. The man running the bath gestures to the bucket like he's offering fine wine. Next, you step forward. It's 2 inches of lukewarm water. Brown, slightly foamy. Definitely, moving in ways water shouldn't. He hands you the sponge. It's damp. You don't ask what else it's damp with. There's no soap. Of course not. Soap is a luxury reserved for officers and hallucinations. You dip the sponge, Squeeze it over your arm and watch as a single trail of semi-clean water cuts a line through the layered filth. Then you look at the bucket. You have contributed. The water is now darker. You look around. There are no towels, just a breeze and the eyes of the next man in line, silently begging you to hurry so he can join the ritual humiliation. You wipe your face. Big mistake. The sponge smells like trench foot and expired milk. Your eyes water. You press on. You clean. What you can, which isn't much. You try not to touch your own neck because you're not sure if what's growing there is part of you anymore. You finish in 90 seconds because that's all you get. The bucket must last until evening. You step out into the daylight. You are wetter. That's about it. You don't feel clean. You feel exposed, like you just removed the one layer of grime that had been protecting you from the psychological collapse bubbling beneath the surface. Collins is right. You do leave dirtier in the soul. Renard meets you at the trench with raised eyebrows. How was it? You shake your head slowly. He nods, says nothing more. Later that evening, you try to scrub your socks. You dunk them in a different bucket. They release a cloud so thick and foul that two nearby men retch. The medic walks by, glances in and mutters, "That's a chemical weapon," before moving on. You rinse. You wring. You fail. The socks win again. The sergeant says a proper bath is coming soon. Real water, fresh uniforms, maybe even shaving razors. Everyone laughs. The kind of laughter, "That sounds like barking." Someone says, "Will the water be warm?" Someone else says, "Will it be water?" No one answers. That night, you dream of bathtubs, porcelain ones, with candles, and a girl humming somewhere in the next room. You dream of soap that smells like citrus, of towels warmed on radiators, of hands that don't shake. You wake up to the sound of someone vomiting into a boot. It's always a boot, and just like that, the fantasy dies. You spend the rest of the day sticky, not clean, not refreshed, just redistributed. The grime that once clung lovingly to your ankles is now somewhere behind your ears. Your shirt feels wetter than it did before the bath, and the backs of your knees itch in a way that suggests you've either developed a fungal condition or achieved spiritual rot. You sniff your arm. It smells like warm sponge and broken promises. Someone suggests you smell better. They're lying. You all smell the same, like a stew of mildew, trench rot, stale breath, and optimism left out in the sun. But for a brief, shimmering moment, you all pretend there's a difference, because pretending is the closest thing to morale you've got. Private Durand claims he scrubbed so hard, he bled. He lifts his sleeve to show you. He's not wrong, but it's not blood, not really. Just skin rubbed raw and weeping slightly. Still, he beams with pride, as if filleting his outer layer counts, as personal grooming. "Clean on the inside now," he says. You don't correct him. The bucket is replenished once that evening. This time, the water arrives in a rusty oil drum and smells like it was filtered through disappointment and goat hair. It sloshes ominously as it's wheeled in by two men who have clearly lost faith in humanity and basic plumbing. You all gather around the fresh filth like it's sacred. No one says what everyone's thinking, that it looks worse than the water. It's replacing, but it's fresh, and that word has power. The same way a slightly less dead rat is still technically alive. You wait your turn. Again. You try the sponge again. Again. Someone tries to get clever and dunk their head in the bucket. He comes up coughing, eyes red, screaming, "It got in my mouth! It got in my mouth!" He is immediately banned from future hygiene attempts by unanimous trench decree. Later that night, the lieutenant drops by. He doesn't enter the cleaning. Shack, of course. He stands at a safe distance and says, "Good to see everyone's keeping up appearances." You all stare at him like he's grown a second head, and it's wearing a monocle. He smiles, nods, and walks away. Someone mutters, "He's never bathed in that bucket." Another says, "He probably has a tub." A third, he probably has soap. The fourth, he probably smells like citrus. You all fall quiet after that. Too much imagining is dangerous. The truth is, bathing out here is less about hygiene and more about the performance of humanity. It's a ritual, a symbolic gesture that says, we're still people. See? We're wiping. Even if you wipe with a rag older than your uniform. Even if your clean towel is a shirt you found in the mud with someone else's initials stitched into the collar. Even if the soap is imaginary and the water gives you blisters, there's a comfort in the routine. Lather, rinse, hope, disappoint. You once met a man who saved a sliver of real soap in a tin. He'd used it once a week, just enough to smell something that didn't come from inside a trench. He died during a latrine collapse. The soap survived. Someone else took the tin. No one talks about it, but you all know who has it now. You envy him more than the officer with clean boots. And that says something. Private Renard claims he remembers the smell of jasmine. You call him a liar. He swears it was his aunt's shampoo. You all nod slowly, and no one mentions that none of you know what jasmine actually smells like anymore. All your memories of clean things have become abstract. Soap, a myth. Shampoo, fiction. Toothpaste, dark magic invented by Swiss dentists. You once found a dry leaf and sniffed it for 5 straight minutes just to remember what outside used to feel like. It smelled like ash. You kept it anyway, pinned it to the wall next to a torn page from a French magazine with a woman smiling at a bar of soap like it just proposed marriage. She looks happy, clean, stupid. You hate her. You love her. Sometimes you apologize to her before bed. The next morning, someone forgets their towel and tries to air dry with a gas mask. No one questions it. Another man tries to bathe using a helmet full of coffee. He drinks it afterward, claims it adds depth. The medic takes his temperature, then quietly removes all the coffee rations from the immediate area. You don't bathe again for 2 weeks. There's no more water. The sponge disappears. Rumor is, someone buried it, not maliciously, respectfully, as one buries a tired comrade who had done too much, seen too much, absorbed too much. You stand at the sponge's final resting place and salute, then go back to the trench, sit in your filth, and scratch at something you hope isn't contagious. It probably is. You are no cleaner than before, but for a single glorious hour, you almost were. And that's worth remembering. It's Christmas morning. You know this not because of any calendar. Time here is a suggestion, not a structure, but because someone in the next trench over starts singing, not shouting, not crying, singing. You don't recognize the words at first. It's German, gentle, melodic, the kind of sound you forgot people were capable of making. Then someone next to you mutters, "That's Silent Night." You scoff, because surely not. But then someone in your trench hums along, then someone else, then you. And before long, there it is, a trench full of lice-ridden, mud-sodden men with trench foot and digestive problems, humming a Christmas carol, while the enemy does the same 20 yards away, with only a sea of corpses and barbed wire between you. It's stupid, it's surreal, it's utterly beautiful. No one told you this. Might happen. No one warned you that war might pause. Not officially, of course. There's no announcement, no trumpet. Just this quiet, not silence. You've forgotten what real silence sounds like, but a kind of shared exhale, like the battlefield took pity for one single accidental moment. Then comes the whisper. They're waving. You peer over the parapet, very carefully, and there they are, German soldiers, smiling, hands raised, not holding rifles. One has his helmet off, another's holding a cigarette like it's peace itself. You're supposed to shoot them. You know that. You've been trained, drilled, screamed at. The enemy is not human. But right now, they look just like you. Mud-covered, tired, young. One of them says something. It might be Merry Christmas, or it might be Don't shoot. Or maybe just please. Either way, you don't fire. No one does. A few brave souls climb out of the trench. Your heart stops, because this is it, the trap. This is where the Germans laugh and open fire, and you all learn what it feels like to die in a Santa hat. But no. They come forward, slow, deliberate. Hands up. No weapons. Someone on your side follows. And suddenly, just like that, you're standing. In no man's land. The place you were never supposed to set foot in unless you were charging or dying. It's still cratered. Still smells like blood and cordite and earthworms. But for the first time, it isn't trying to kill you. You stare at the German opposite you. He grins. He pulls something from his coat pocket and hands it over. It's chocolate. Real chocolate. Not whatever chalky mess the rations call cocoa substitute. This melts in your hand. Smells like home. You don't even eat it at first. You just hold it and try not to cry. You give him a cigarette in return. He lights it. Takes a long drag. Offers the match. You don't know each other's names. You don't speak the same language. But for once, that doesn't matter. Someone kicks a ball. God knows where they found it. Suddenly, there's a football match happening between two armies. Boots as goals. Rifles used as posts. Men with frostbite and missing teeth and shell shock kicking around a half-flat ball like they're back on school fields, and none of this horror ever happened. You cheer, you laugh, you live. For one golden hour, the war disappears, and then someone gets shot. No one's sure who fired first. A nervous finger? An over-eager officer desperate to reassert control? A man who just didn't believe the peace was real? It doesn't matter. The sound is sharp, final, echoing. The truce shatters like glass under boot. Everyone freezes. A body falls. One of yours. He was shaking hands. He just wanted to say, "Merry Christmas." The Germans back away fast. Hands raised. Eyes wide. The football rolls into a crater and vanishes. No more laughter. No more songs. Just fear again. The officers yell. Rifles reload. Someone grabs you by the collar and drags you back into the trench. Before your skull gets ventilated by an apology, you hit the mud hard. Breathing heavy, fists clenched, face wet. Not with rain this time. You lie there for a while, tasting the chocolate still melting in your palm, mixed with grime and tears, and the gunpowder stink of reality snapping back into place. The world ends again. But this time it feels worse, because now you remember what peace felt like. You'd almost forgotten. By the time you crawl back into the trench, the warmth is gone. Not just the physical warmth, that left with the sun, but the emotional one too. The brief human flicker that somehow survived 4 years of mud, gas, and screaming is now officially dead. Shot through the heart by someone doing their job, or panicking, or proving a point. You sit in silence. So does everyone else. It's quieter than usual, which is impressive given the baseline volume of war. Even the rats seem unsure how to act. One crawls past carrying a biscuit half its size, and you're too numb to swat it. Fair play. He's earned it. The chocolate you were given melts fully in your hand. You forgot it was there. You lick it off, almost reverently. It tastes like grief and sugar. Someone lights a cigarette. No one complains. Even though the smell draws fire and the spark is visible. Even though it's reckless. Even though it's selfish. Because right now, hope is the only contraband. And if someone wants to burn a few seconds of comfort to remember what breathing felt like, let them. Private Durand mutters, "Well, that was nice." You look at him. He shrugs. I mean, until the murder part. No, one laughs. Not this time. Someone else says, "They'll never let us do that again." And they're right. Orders come down within the hour. Any further interaction with the enemy will be considered treason. Fraternization is a punishable offense, and just in case anyone missed the point, a fresh artillery barrage is scheduled for the morning. Nothing says, get back to hating each other, like synchronized shellfire. You curl up on your blanket, back against a frozen wall of dirt, and try to sleep. You dream about the German who gave you chocolate. In the dream, he's in your kitchen. He's peeling apples for a pie. Your mother is humming in the next room. He smiles and offers you a slice. Then you both get vaporized by a shell. You wake up coughing, not from gas, not this time, just from cold air and lungs that haven't worked properly since autumn. Outside, the trench is darker than usual. Clouds have moved in. The moon is gone, and it feels like the ceasefire took the stars with it. You hear the Germans singing again, quieter now. Not carols, just voices, a lullaby maybe, or a prayer. You want to sing back, but your throat won't cooperate. It's too tight, too dry, too full of everything you didn't say when you had the chance. Collins breaks the silence. I gave one of them a scarf, he says, like he's confessing to murder. He looked cold. You nod. He looks at you. They're not supposed to look cold. No, you say. They're supposed to look evil. He nods, then spits, then cries. No one tells him to stop. In the morning, the shelling resumes. Not a gentle warning, not a gradual escalation, just thunder, immediate and unapologetic. The kind of artillery that rearranges your understanding of sound and turns your stomach into a percussion instrument. The mud jumps. The trench shakes. You duck and wait. Everything you rebuilt in your head yesterday, the humanity, the fragility, the almost peace, it crumbles in under 30 seconds. Someone yells, "Where's my rifle?" Someone else replies, "Still with the German you gave it to, probably." That one gets a bitter laugh, which is a start. You climb back onto the firing step, helmet tight, hands trembling, a field full of bodies between you and the people you sang with yesterday. The German lines are invisible behind smoke and noise, but you know they're there. And they know you are. And somewhere, maybe, someone is still holding a trinket you gave them, a button, a cigarette, a joke in broken French. You wonder what they're doing now, digging deeper, writing a letter, cleaning chocolate, off their fingers. The lieutenant yells something about discipline. The sergeant repeats it with more volume and less conviction. You chamber around, just in case. Because that's the thing about this war. It gives you glimpses of light not to lift you, but to remind you how far you've fallen. Hope isn't a gift here. It's bait. You survived Christmas, which is more than some can say. You light a cigarette of your own and watch the horizon for movement. The man next to you says, "You think they'll try that again?" You exhale smoke that tastes like burnt chocolate and singed forgiveness. "No," you say, and pray you're wrong. It ends not with glory, not with trumpets, not even with a proper announcement. It just stops. The whispers start first. An armistice, a ceasefire, terms negotiated by men who never saw a trench, words scribbled on paper in a train car, 100 miles from the stench and screaming. Some officers cry, some laugh, most just look confused. Someone says, "The war is over." You stare at them like they've told you the moon exploded. Because how can it be over? There wasn't a final battle. No flag planted in the dirt. No parade through a ruined city. Just silence. Deafening, awkward silence. The kind that feels like a mistake. You wake up the next morning and no one's firing. It's the most terrifying part of the war. Nothing is exploding. No one is sobbing. The rats are as confused as you are. You sit on the edge of the trench, boots dangling over the side. For the first time in 4 years, no one yells at you for it. Renard lights a cigarette and mutters, "So what now?" No one answers. Because no one knows. You're told to pack, to clean up, to get ready to go home. That phrase feels like a joke someone forgot to punch up. Go home. You haven't thought of home as a real place in years. Home is a story you used to tell yourself when you still had hope and working knees. But orders are orders. So you pack. Not much to pack, really. A uniform that smells like betrayal. A pair of socks with a personal vendetta. A biscuit tin filled with damp letters and dreams that didn't make it back. You march, back across fields that once tried to kill you, past craters you used as beds, past bones you stepped over without noticing. No cheering crowds, just wind and mud, and you. Eventually, you reach the train station. They give you a ticket, a coat, some dry bread, and a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Someone says, "Thank you for your service." You nod. Not because it means anything, but because it's easier than screaming. The train ride home is quiet. Men sleep in their seats, some weep. One stares at the window like he's expecting it to shoot first. You try to nap, but without artillery in the background, your brain thinks, something's wrong. It's too calm, too quiet, too safe. You drift off and dream of machine guns. You wake up gasping, hand reaching for a rifle that isn't there. Welcome to peace. You arrive back home to the sound of your own boots on cobblestones. There's no band, no parade, just the faint smell of baking bread somewhere nearby, which hits harder than any explosion ever did. You stand on the platform for a full minute before anyone even notices your back. Then a woman gasps and runs forward. She hugs you. You don't know her name. She's a neighbor, maybe. Or someone who remembers the boy who left. You let her hug you because it seems to mean something to her. Her warmth is real. Yours isn't. She says, "You're home." You nod. She pulls back, looks at your face, and stops smiling. Because it's not the face she remembered. Your mother cries when she sees you. She touches your cheek like it's glass, like she's afraid you'll shatter. You want to say something, anything, but the only words that come to mind are trench instructions and the sound of a man dying with your name on his lips. So instead, you say, "I'm hungry," because that's easier. Your bed is still there. It's softer than you remember, too soft. You sleep curled in a ball on the floor, wrapped in your coat. You don't know why. It just feels safer. The nightmares come fast. Barbed wire, whistles, the taste of blood in your teeth, and the sound of someone whispering gas over and over like a broken prayer. You wake up and check for your rifle. It isn't there. It never will be again. But you keep checking anyway. They call you a hero. They say things like bravery, duty, honor. You nod. You smile. You thank them. But deep down, you're screaming. Where were you when I needed socks? Where were you when my best friend coughed up his lungs and we used a spoon to dig his grave? Where were you when I buried a man I didn't even like and whipped like he was my brother because he died next to me instead of on me? You walk down the street and people nod politely. Children wave. Someone offers you a rose. You almost drop it. The softness of the petals sends your nerves into full retreat. You haven't touched anything that delicate since before you knew what human suffering smelled like. You say thank you. You say nothing else. You get a job. Of course you do. Because the war is over, and now you must become a functioning member of society. You stand behind a counter, or sweep a floor, or hammer nails into something someone else will live in. People around you talk about the price of bread. You think about the time you ate mud because it had more flavor than the rations. You meet someone. They yawn, smile. You try to smile back. They ask if you're all right. You say yes, because it's easier than unpacking the fact that your soul was replaced by wet wool and rat bites. They ask about the war. You say, it was long. They nod. They think that's enough. Sometimes late at night you put on your coat and walk into the backyard just to lie on the dirt. You close your eyes. You breathe, and for a second, just a second, it feels right. Broken, cold, but familiar. You find yourself staring at walls, pausing in hallways, listening for shellfire that will never come, missing it. Not because it was good, but because at least it made sense. You had orders. You had a reason. You had brothers. Now, you have silence and a chest that wheezes like a haunted bellows every time it rains. Your lungs are ruined. Your back clicks. Your hands tremble when no one's watching. But hey, you survived. That's what they keep telling you. You're one of the lucky ones. So you nod, you go home, you eat, you sleep, you pretend. Because what else is there? You look in the mirror one day and realize you don't recognize the man looking back. Not just because of the scars or the grey in your hair, but because he doesn't remember who he was before the mud. You were someone once. Someone with plans. With hobbies. With dreams that didn't involve just waking up dry. Now, you're a collection of survival tactics in a man's shape. And every time someone says, "Thank you for your service," you want to scream, "You're welcome," for being the punchline, for being the proof that this war ended. Even if I never did. You go to sleep that night and dream of a trench. Not because you want to, but because your soul never really came home. It's still out there, under the mud, holding a rusted rifle and waiting for the whistle to blow.